Why are you complaining? You never paid rent anyway. My dad scoffed. Oh, really? I laughed. Then I canceled the mortgage payment I had been covering for years. Now they're facing eviction and crying to me for help. She uttered the words plainly, without any prelude, without the slightest hint of remorse, as if she were making an offhand remark about the weather. We're giving them your room, my mother declared, carefully slicing her bagel with the utmost precision, as though she hadn't just pushed me off a ledge with no warning whatsoever. At 25 years old, I was still living under their roof, employed full-time at a warehouse, trying to save diligently so I could eventually leave without financially crippling myself. Every paycheck required delicate balancing. Some money went into savings, some covered bills, some contributed to household groceries, and then there was the water heater I had paid for last autumn, which nobody seemed to recall had come from my pocket. I wasn't taking advantage of anyone. I was simply lying low, navigating the situation cautiously and silently, existing as though I occupied borrowed territory. All right, I responded, even managing a faint smile, just enough to mask any sign of unease. I'll start packing up my things tonight. In that instant, I made my decision. I was done. It wasn't truly about the room. It never is it? That room was merely the final piece in a crumbling wall, the breaking point that shattered the illusion I had maintained since my teenage years. That house had never really felt like mine. I was merely a convenience, much like an appliance that functioned quietly in the background until it either malfunctioned or became an obstruction. That morning, I still went to work as usual, but something deep inside me had already shifted. I wasn't coming back. Not permanently. I didn't mention anything to anyone. Instead, during my lunch break, I scrolled through rental listings, found a modest one-bedroom apartment just 10 minutes away from my job, and immediately placed a deposit, 6 months' rent paid up front. I had been saving for something else, perhaps a car, perhaps a future that didn't feel like exile. But this felt like the right decision. That evening, I returned home as I always did, still smiled when my mother asked me to take out the garbage, still fixed the Wi-Fi when it disconnected mid-dinner, because my sister needed it for her online lesson. But in my head, I had already walked away. And that night, I started systematically unraveling every responsibility I had shouldered for them. I started with the lawn. Every Saturday morning for the last 18 months, I had mowed it, edged the borders, raked the clippings, and even reseeded the bare patches in spring, all without being asked, all without acknowledgement. Years ago, my father had taken care of it, but the moment I was old enough to handle the mower, the duty had silently transferred to me. No gratitude, no recognition, just an expectation. That weekend, I let the grass grow. The rain from the previous week had already made it tall, but I didn't touch it. I walked right past the shed where the mower sat and instead drove off for coffee, treating it like any other day. When I returned, my father was standing in the front yard, arms folded, glaring at the overgrown lawn as though it had personally offended him. "You forget to cut the grass?" he asked, already sounding annoyed. I merely shrugged. "No, just didn't feel like it." He blinked as if the concept was incomprehensible to him. "So, you gonna do it later?" "Don't think so," I replied nonchalantly as I walked past him. "I'm busy." It was the smallest rebellion, but the impact rippled instantly. By Sunday night, the Wi-Fi was down again. My sister was screeching from her bedroom, her Zoom tutoring session abruptly cut off. Normally, I would have reset the router, swapped out the unreliable coaxial cable behind the television, and rebooted the connection, a process I had memorized after countless failures over the past year. Instead, I remained in the kitchen, methodically spooning chili into a Tupperware container, pretending not to hear her distress. "Mom," she called out, panicked, "the Wi-Fi's out again." "I don't know how to fix this." From another room, my mother's sharp voice responded, "Where is he?" I let them struggle for 30 minutes before I casually walked out the door with my meal prep. Not a single person said a word. That particular week, I stopped collecting my sister from school. I didn't give anyone prior notice. For months, I had handled it nearly every Tuesday and Thursday without fail. My mother's work hours didn't align, and my father refused to leave early. So I had quietly adjusted my own schedule to make it happen, just like everything else I took care of. Thursday arrived and passed, and my sister remained in the school office for 2 hours before anyone finally picked her up. When I stepped her through the door that evening, the air was heavy with unspoken tension, thick enough to suffocate. "You didn't pick up your sister today," my mother stated, her tone devoid of emotion. "No," I responded while placing my keys down. "I didn't forget." She locked eyes with me, expecting something more. Without another word, I walked past her and into my room. I believe that was the moment they truly started to realize just how much I had been handling. But that was only the beginning. By the third day, the kitchen sink was leaking again. The slow, rhythmic drip had returned, like an old problem resurfacing after being temporarily buried. I had repaired it the previous year, replacing the faulty gasket with one I had bought myself. I had even driven across town to a specialty hardware store just to find the correct size. I never mentioned it at the time. I simply fixed it and continued on with life. Now the leak was back, and so was the small puddle forming beneath the cabinet. My father crouched beside the sink, a roll of paper towels in hand, muttering under his breath as he shined a flashlight on the mess like he was investigating a crime scene. As I walked by sipping my coffee, he looked up. "You know how to fix this, don't you?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, stopping briefly in the doorway. "I do." He kept staring, expecting a response. I just kept walking. That evening, once dinner was over, I didn't clean up. No rinsing dishes, no wiping counters. I simply stretched, stood up, and went to my room while the rest of them sat there, pretending not to notice. By now, the unspoken tension was a living thing, pulsing through the house. On Friday, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Can you cover the electricity bill this month? We forgot. It's due today, and your father's paycheck hasn't arrived yet." I stared at the text for a moment. For over a year, I had been quietly taking care of last-minute bills like that, ensuring they avoided late fees more times than I could even count. I had even set reminders in my own phone to prevent their services from getting shut off. Not this time. "Sorry, I have rent now, remember?" I replied. She never responded. The next night when I arrived home, the porch light was off. The house felt darker than usual, quieter than it had ever been. My sister sat at the dining table, irritation clear on her face as she flipped through her math homework, furiously scratching at the paper with the wrong end of a pencil. "You didn't pick up printer paper?" she asked without lifting her head. I had always been the one to buy it. I had always remembered. "Nope," I said, dropping my backpack by the door. Thought someone else might take care of it this time. She slammed the pencil onto the table and stomped away. From the hallway, my mother stood watching, her expression sharp, studying me like I was some kind of puzzle with all the pieces rearranged into the wrong spots. I met her gaze and smiled. Not smug, just calm. Everything was slowly unraveling. Not because I had done anything dramatic or cruel. All I had done was step back. That was what unsettled them the most. Saturday morning arrived with no coffee. I heard the sound of cabinet doors opening and slamming, followed by a faint muttered curse from my mother when she realized they had run out of coffee grounds. I had always been the one to keep it stocked. Bulk bags from the store near my workplace. Picked up on my way home. Never acknowledged, just replaced. That morning, they stared at an empty coffee tin and a silent brewer as if it had betrayed them. I sat in the living room finishing a bowl of cereal, already dressed with my keys resting in my palm. I remained silent. My mother peered over the top of her mug, which now held nothing but steaming water. "Are you heading out?" she inquired, her voice even, but laced with curiosity. "Yeah," I responded, swallowing my last spoonful. "Meeting the property owner, picking up a few necessities." At the word property owner, she tensed just slightly. I merely gave a nod, rose to my feet, and stepped outside before she could press for more details. 2 hours later, I returned, a few boxes heavier and even more certain of my decision. That afternoon, I started clearing out my space, not in haste, not making a scene, just steadily and intentionally. One container at a time, I carried my belongings out, slotting them into my car's trunk or back seat before going back for another. I was acutely aware of their eyes on me the entire time. No one questioned me. No one lifted a hand to assist. By dinner, half of my room had been packed. My father feigned normalcy, flipping through television channels as if nothing was out of place. My sister stayed fixated on her phone. My mother, however, attempted to shift the situation. "So," she began cautiously, "we talked, and we feel like maybe we should hold off on letting Olivia take your room for now." I halted, fork hovering midair. "Why?" She shot a glance toward my father, who pretended not to hear. "Well, considering everything happening, maybe it's not the best moment." I took a bite, chewed, then swallowed. This is the exact right moment." The room went still. "I already signed an agreement," I added. "I'll be moving by Tuesday." My sister blinked. "Wait, you're serious?" I met her gaze directly. "Olivia, you stuffed my belongings into plastic bins when I wasn't home. I found them stacked under the staircase. So yeah, I'm serious." She didn't argue. My mother's voice dropped to something softer. "You should have spoken up." "I did," I countered. "You just didn't listen." Because I said it with a smile. Then I resumed eating, unbothered, while they sat in silence, as if the power dynamic had shifted overnight, and they were only now grasping that I meant every word, that I wouldn't be staying. By Monday evening, I was nothing but an echo in that house. Boxes sat neatly stacked beside the door, labeled in thick black marker. Kitchen items, clothing, tools, assorted electronic. Every possession I had claimed as mine was already either secured in my car or sitting inside my new apartment, still empty but brimming with new beginnings just a short drive away. But I took my time. No hurried departure, no slamming doors. I wanted them to experience it, to recognize it. The stillness of the home when I wasn't silently keeping everything running. Trash had yet to be taken out. The mailbox remained unchecked. The upstairs hallway bathroom emitted that persistent gurgling sound every few hours, something I had repaired 3 times before, but not this time. I walked past it all, a strange sense of calm settling within me. At one point, my father blocked my path in the kitchen. "You really think this is the best move?" he asked, arms folded, trying to appear more invested than he truly was. I opened the refrigerator. Half the contents inside were items I had purchased last week. A multi-pack of yogurt that no one but me ever ate. A partially consumed jug of orange juice that always vanished before I got my fair share. I grabbed a bottle of water, then turned toward him. "Yeah," I said, for the first time in ages. His expression hardened. "You think it's that easy? Rent, utilities, all of it." I locked eyes with him, holding the silence just long enough. Then I smiled. "I've been covering your bills for the past year," I stated. "I think I'll manage my own just fine." He had no retort. He just stared, as if waiting for some kind of joke that wasn't coming. Then he walked away. Upstairs, my sister's door was ajar. I glimpsed inside, my former room, now hers. She had already begun decorating, stringing up soft fairy lights and tossing pastel-colored cushions around. But the shelves I had mounted into the wall remained. The patch of drywall I had repaired after she kicked a hole in it during a tantrum was still holding firm. She caught me looking. "You could have just said no," she murmured, avoiding my gaze. I nodded. "And you could have asked." I kept moving. There was no resentment left. That fire had long since burned out. What remained was something keener, something unwavering, clarity. On Tuesday morning, I was officially gone. I placed the last box in the back seat of my car and took one final look at the house. Not with any emotion, not with sadness, just a simple assessment. The porch light remained unfixed. The recycling bins overflowed, and the Wi-Fi was still down. The irony of it all felt poetic. Before leaving, I walked into the kitchen and taped a single sheet of paper onto the fridge. The words, printed in dark ink, were plain and factual. No sentiment, no extra words. Responsibilities I handled that you likely never acknowledged. Cut the grass every single week. Hauled out the garbage and recycling regularly. Paid for 5 utility bills when they went overdue. Fixed the Wi-Fi router over 10 times. Spent around $1,200 on groceries over 9 months. Drove Olivia home from school on 32 occasions. Replaced the porch light bulbs 3 separate times. Cleaned up after dinner nearly every night. Contributed $200 to Dad's car repair. Kept this house functioning while being treated like an outsider. At the bottom, I added one final statement. Good luck managing all of this. I'm finally leaving to live as a guest in my own space. Then I locked the door behind me for the last time. No one contacted me that first day. By the second, the messages started rolling in. First, my mother, a missed call, followed by a text. "Hey, the internet isn't working. Do you remember the login for the router?" Then my father, attempting to sound neutral but failing to mask his irritation. "Where do you keep the key to the lawnmower?" I ignored them both. By Friday, the messages turned into guilt-tripping and confusion. Olivia sent me a single-word text. "Seriously?" I figured they assumed I would give in, that I would eventually come back to help once things became inconvenient. Maybe they thought I was simply making a point, not permanently leaving. They had miscalculated. Meanwhile, my apartment was finally feeling like mine. I installed shelves, chose my own kitchenware, and blasted music at whatever volume I liked. The silence I had longed for was no longer suffocating. It was genuine, undemanding, peaceful. It felt like the world had finally stopped expecting anything from me. A week later, my mother called once more. This time I answered. Her voice was tight, stretched thin with frustration. "You didn't have to leave the way you did." I remained silent, letting her continue. "We didn't realize how much you were handling," she admitted. "The bills, the garbage. I had no idea it was all on you." "Yeah," I responded evenly. "I know." A long silence settled between us. "Olivia's having a hard time with school pickups. We both work, and she's struggling with taking the bus." I didn't reply. We never expected things to fall apart this fast." "That's because you never saw what was holding it all together." Another pause. Then, trying to regain her composure, she said, "Well, I hope you're happy now." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "I am. And I always was." In the days that followed, I felt like I was observing my old life through a glass pane, something I could see but not touch. Olivia never texted me again after I ignored her last message. My father never reached out again, most likely too proud to do so. As for my mother, she sent occasional messages, each one carrying a hesitant tone. "Hope everything's going well for you." Or, Things are a bit chaotic around here. She never explicitly said they missed me, only implied that the house didn't feel the same. I never replied, but I still heard things through neighbors and mutual acquaintances. The yard had become overgrown. Olivia had missed several more pickups and even had to walk home in the rain once. The water supply was cut off for half a day before they remembered to settle the bill, and the front porch light continued to flicker as if signaling distress. They were overwhelmed by the small, everyday responsibilities they had always assumed took care of themselves, the very ones I had managed effortlessly. And the strange thing? I felt no sense of victory. There was no satisfaction in their struggle, no lingering resentment. I wasn't even upset anymore. I had simply moved forward. I adjusted to my new routine. I started preparing my own meals. Nothing elaborate, just simple dishes, but they tasted better than anything I ever ate back in that house. Not because the ingredients were better, but because they belonged to me. My sleep improved as well. No more floorboards creaking outside my door at odd hours. No abrupt knocks asking me to make a quick errand run. No constant weight of unspoken expectations pressing against me. Just stillness, a genuine, undisturbed quiet. Roughly a week and a half after I left, I arrived home late from work and found a small envelope wedged under my apartment door. No sender information, only my name scrawled across the front in my mother's handwriting. Inside, a single sheet of lined notebook paper, carefully folded. At the top, it read, "We didn't realize." Below that, a list. Unlike mine, it was unstructured, lacking bullet points, just scattered thoughts jotted down hurriedly. The trash, Olivia's school rides, the internet, the groceries, the leaky sink, the porch light issue, the emptiness, and at the bottom, one final sentence. "We never treated you like a son. I'm sorry." That was it. No desperate plea for me to return. No empty promises to change, just recognition. And for the first time since walking away, I felt something shift, not toward them, but within myself. It wasn't closure, not exactly, but perhaps it was enough. I never sent a reply. Not because I was indifferent. If anything, I felt a lot. I left that letter sitting on my kitchen counter for hours, reread it the next morning, folded and unfolded it, contemplated its meaning. But written words on a page couldn't erase years of being overlooked. A hastily scribbled list didn't undo all the times I was only acknowledged when something needed fixing or paying for. They had finally begun to notice the space I left behind. That much was clear, but it was no longer my role to fill it. By the second week, I heard Olivia had finally figured out how to take the bus by herself, though she missed it twice and ended up waiting in the rain again. My mother had hired a lawn care service. My father, in an attempt to reset the Wi-Fi, had accidentally disconnected the entire modem, disabling the house alarm and leaving their smart TV offline for an entire day. They were adapting, slowly, awkwardly, like someone relearning how to walk after forgetting how to use their legs. And me, I was thriving in the absence of their expectations. I started doing things I had never allowed myself to before. I bought a bookshelf, not out of necessity, but simply because I wanted one. Every Friday, I treated myself to a meal out, turning it into a personal tradition. I even registered for a weekend woodworking class, an activity I had delayed for years because there was always someone needing assistance, transportation, or financial aid. The burden had lifted, and I hadn't even recognized how much weight I had been shouldering until it was no longer my responsibility. One evening, while organizing my inbox, I came across an old calendar notification I had scheduled months earlier. Dad's vehicle registration. Check if he's short on money again. I gazed at it for a long moment before finally selecting delete. That night, I lounged on my modest balcony, legs resting on a plastic chair, and simply exhaled. For the first time, I wasn't anticipating an inevitable disaster. I wasn't listening for someone calling out to me. I wasn't preparing myself for another request disguised as a minor favor. The silence, which once felt overwhelming, no longer seemed empty. It felt like peace. I haven't gone back. Not even for visits, not even for celebration. The calls ceased. Perhaps they feel ashamed. Perhaps they're simply drained. Or perhaps they finally recognized that I wasn't just an occupant in that household. I was the structure holding everything in place. And when the foundation disappears, everything begins to collapse. The note I had taped to the refrigerator is probably still hanging there, or maybe they removed it the way someone discards an object that stirs too much guilt to keep looking at. Regardless, it had already served its purpose. Farewell.
Asterisk after listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. *.